He knocked at 5 a.m. and said, "Don't go to work." By noon, I knew he saved my life. There are mornings that change everything, not because of what you planned, but because of what arrives unannounced at your door before the sun has even had the courage to rise. This was one of those mornings. It was 4 minutes past 5 when the pounding started. Not a gentle knock, not the kind of sound a neighbor makes when they need to borrow something. This was urgent, desperate, the kind of knock that reaches into your chest and squeezes. I had been awake already, lying in the gray stillness of my bedroom, listening to the particular silence that fills a house when you live alone. When I opened that door, I saw my neighbor Gabriel standing in the cold, his face drained of color, his hands trembling slightly at his sides. He looked at me with eyes that held a warning I could not yet read. "Do not go to work today," he said. His voice was low, controlled, as though he had rehearsed those words 100 times. "Stay home. Just trust me." I stared at him. Gabriel was not the kind of man who caused scenes. In the year since he had moved in next door, we had exchanged perhaps 20 conversations. He kept to himself. He was polite. He was invisible in the way only careful people are. Seeing him like this was not just surprising, it was alarming. "You will understand by noon," he whispered. Then he turned and walked back to his house without another word. And I stood there in my doorway, the cold morning air pressing against my face, wondering whether I was about to make the most rational decision of my life, or the most foolish. My name is Olivia. I am 53 years old, a senior financial analyst with 26 years of experience at one of the most respected investment firms in the country. I built my career the same way I built my life, carefully, methodically, one sound decision at a time. I inherited the house I live in from my mother. It is a quiet house on a quiet street, and I had grown comfortable in its rhythms. I was not the kind of woman who stayed home without a reason. I had not missed a day of work due to anything other than illness in over a decade. But 3 months before that morning, my father had died. Officially, the cause was listed as a stroke. He was 67, reasonably healthy, and had been trying, in the weeks before his death, to tell me something important. Every time I pressed him, he would say the same thing. "There are things you need to know, Olivia. Things about our family that I have kept from you too long." And then something would interrupt us, or he would grow quiet, or he would say, "Not yet, not quite yet." And then he was gone, and I never found out what he had been trying to say. In the weeks that followed, strange things began to happen. A car with tinted windows parked outside my house for hours, then disappeared. My phone would ring from blocked numbers, and when I answered, there was only silence. My younger sister, who lives abroad, called to ask whether I had noticed anyone new watching the house. Have you ever felt that kind of slow-moving dread? The sense that something is closing in around you, just beyond the edge of your vision, and no matter how hard you look, you cannot quite see it? I had dismissed it all as grief, as the strange paranoia that loss can sometimes bring. But standing in my doorway that morning, listening to Gabriel's footsteps fade into the dark, I understood that this was not grief playing tricks on me. I texted my manager and told her I would not be in. Then I waited. By 11:30, I had nearly convinced myself that I was overreacting. Nothing had happened. The street was quiet. Gabriel had not returned. I was sitting in my kitchen with a cup of tea gone cold when my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I answered. The voice on the other end was calm, professional, and immediate. "Ma'am, this is Officer Taylor with the County Police Department. Are you aware of a critical incident that occurred at your workplace this morning?" My breath caught. I had not gone to work. I had been home all morning. "What incident?" I asked. There was a pause. "A violent attack took place at your building. Several employees were injured. We have reason to believe you were present at the time." "That is impossible," I said. "I have been home." Another pause, longer this time. "Ma'am, we have footage of your vehicle arriving at the parking garage at 8:02 this morning. Your security badge was used to enter the building." Colleagues report seeing you on the third floor before the attack, and items belonging to you were recovered near the scene. My hands went cold. Someone had used my car. Someone had cloned my access card. Someone had placed my belongings at the site of a violent crime and then made sure there was footage of a vehicle with my license plates arriving at the scene. This was not random. This was constructed. Before I could ask another question, the officer told me that units would arrive at my address shortly. He told me not to leave the premises. I hung up, and before I had taken 3 steps toward the window, there was a knock at my front door. It was Gabriel. His face was still pale, but his voice was steadier now, as though the moment he had been preparing for had finally arrived. He stepped inside and spoke quickly, without drama. The police coming to your door are not coming to protect you. They are coming to place you in federal custody. You were meant to be inside that building this morning, not as a victim, as the person they would blame. I could barely form the words. Why me? He reached into his jacket and handed me a small black envelope. "Your father left this for you," he said. "I moved here to watch over you. He asked me to." Inside the envelope was a handwritten letter in my father's unmistakable script. I will not share every word of it here, but I will tell you what it said in its heart. It said that I was not in danger because of anything I had done. I was in danger because of what I was, because of what I knew without yet knowing I knew it, and because powerful people had spent years trying to ensure I would never ask the right questions. My father had spent nearly 2 decades quietly documenting a covert operation. He had found proof of crimes reaching into institutions most people trust without thinking. When he had tried to bring that proof forward, he had been silenced. His death, the letter said, was not a stroke. It was a message. And I was the last thread they had not yet cut. The sirens were audible now, still distant, but growing closer. Gabriel handed me a metal keycard with a red emblem pressed into its surface. "There is a secure vault," he said. "Your father stored everything there. Every name, every document, every financial trail. If we reach it before they reach us, you will have the power to release everything to the public. All of it." I looked at my father's letter one final time. I looked at Gabriel. And I made a decision not out of anger, not out of fear, but out of the particular clarity that comes when you finally stop pretending you do not already know the truth. I put the keycard in my pocket and said, "Show me where we need to go." We reached the vault. I will not tell you that it was easy. It was not. But I will tell you what mattered. Inside that vault, my father had assembled something extraordinary. 20 years of careful, patient, meticulous documentation. Names, dates, financial records. Evidence so precise and so thoroughly organized that it could only have been built by someone who had spent their entire career knowing exactly how to make numbers tell the truth. He had been a financial analyst, just like me. He had taught me everything I knew about following the money, about finding the discrepancies that powerful people believe they have buried too deep to find. And in the end, it was that knowledge, the professional expertise he had passed to me over a lifetime of quiet dinners and careful conversations, that became the weapon they had never anticipated. Because they had planned for a frightened woman. They had not planned for a trained financial analyst who understood exactly how to read what her father had left behind. The vault contained a control terminal, 2 options: surrender or release everything. I pressed the second button without hesitation. The files streamed to secure media outlets, to oversight bodies, to legal organizations that had been waiting years for exactly this kind of evidence. The operation my father had spent his life trying to expose did not collapse immediately. These things never do. But the ground beneath it shifted in a way it would never recover from. Their arrogance had been their undoing. They had believed that framing me would silence the story. Instead, it had handed me every reason to tell it. There is something I want you to take from this story, and it is this. Financial independence is not just about money. It is about knowledge. It is about understanding enough about how the systems around you work that no one can manipulate those systems against you without your awareness. My father understood this.
He spent his career protecting that knowledge, and in the end, he passed it to me like a torch. Starting over at any age, rebuilding your sense of safety, reclaiming your own narrative after someone has tried to rewrite it without your consent, these things are possible, not because the world is just, but because the truth, when it is documented carefully and released at the right moment, has a power that fear cannot match. The people who tried to erase me made one fatal error. They underestimated what a woman with 26 years of professional expertise, a father's legacy, and absolutely nothing left to lose is capable of. Justice after 50 is not a consolation prize. It is the real thing, and it is sweeter for having been earned. If this story reminded you that your experience is your strength, share it with someone who needs to hear that today. And if you are walking through your own version of this, if you have felt watched, doubted, or written off, remember what my father wrote in that letter.
You were not born to be controlled. You were born to reveal what control really is.